Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Throne Podcast. Today, we're going to get right into the family dynamics. When I say family dynamics, we're going to talk about daddy issues, mommy issues, and going into loving relationship and how that shows up. Come on, let's rock with it. Mama issues, daddy issues.
I got them.
Growing up, whether they're absent or in your life, it still can be issues going on there. You know what I'm saying? Little sprinkles of trauma here and there.
Yep.
How does that show up in these love relationships today?
Well, I definitely can stand up with my head held high and my chest out and say I got mommy issues and daddy issues. And those issues have showed up not only in my love relationships, but in all of my relationships. And the reason they've shown up in all of my relationships is because they're my personal issues. And so they affect how I show up in any space because I'm always dealing with feelings of abandonment, not being good enough. And that not being good enough comes from your parents having an idea of who you are or who they want you to be or who you should be. And they impose these expectations on you. And when you grow up and you become someone who's not who they expected you to be, that's a blow for them. And I'm learning that in my relationship with my children as they are entering into their adult lives and coming into their own, because I've been such a heavy participant in their growth since I've been home, feeling like I had, stuff to make up for and just wanting the best for them and feeling a sense of urgency. And so now that they're transitioning into adulthood, it's hard for me to back up off of them and not bitch at them about little shit and let them make their mistakes and not, rescue them and do things for them that they need to be doing for themselves. There's a dynamic there in that transition where as a parent, I've had to learn to let go of certain things.
Sort of like getting an acceptance of it.
Yes, because they need the space and the freedom to explore who they are, just like I'm in an exploration stage. And so I have to understand that I'm 43 years old and I'm just now coming into my own. And my kids are so much farther along than I was at 20 and 24.
Mm-hmm.
So in understanding that gives me the strength to back up and be like, these kids are solid. I know that they've got my words hidden in their heart. Let me, let them go. But in my relationship with my parents, they won't allow me that freedom. And so I've spent so much of my time trying to make my parents proud or trying to not, rock the boat as far as the way I present myself to the world, because I don't want my mother specifically, because my dad, shit, whatever. But my mom, like I want her to be proud. And my mother has weaponized all of the things about me that I'm proud of. That I was in the military. She refers to me as being militant, and she painted in a light like that's a bad thing. She calls me institutionalized because I've been in prison, because I'm very cut and dry. I'm a straight shooter. I'm not going to give you any fluff.
Well
and
organized.
A lot of times my words will rub you the wrong way. And my mom is unaccepting of that. She's not accepting of that. And so we bump heads. And that's a real source of pain for me. So I carry that into my relationships. And in my love relationships, that daddy issue, that him never being there, not being able to count on him, I don't trust men. I believe that y'all talk a good game because y'all want this good pussy.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen that over and over. Once you get it, then the story changes, the dynamic changes. So same as with my dad. I met him once when I was 5. He came again when I was 15. But each time he came around, he was just trying to get something from my mama. Now that I'm grown, I know what that was.
Right. You see that.
And so that doesn't help any man's case with me
Yeah.
because I'm anticipating you being on bullshit. I'm anticipating you only hear from my body.
Right.
Wow.
I see. I can relate with that because I had daddy issues as well. With my dad, it was always money, so it was always transactional. And so he never was there. He was there for me physically, right? But he was never there for me emotionally.
Mm.
And so what I found was I was connecting with men that had status, you know what I'm saying, that had something
Mhm.
going for themselves. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that I didn't dig deeper into their character because that front was there.
Yeah,
That
that
successful
trumped
front.
everything else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so once we got into the relationship, got deeper into get to know the man or whatever, and I'm like, ooh, where did this come from? And all of a sudden, I'm in a situation. And I'm like, oh my God, like I didn't. How come I didn't? Because they love bomb you. You know what I'm saying? With all kinds of things, and I just started to view relationships as more transactional than anything. It was just more so like, okay, well, what can you do for me? This and that. So then when I actually did have a relationship with somebody who really was genuine, you know, and came from a place that didn't have a lot of money, but was just doing even just the little small things, you know, just paying attention, you know, to what I need. Or if I would say, oh, I need this. And next thing you know, he would do this. But I didn't receive it because all I was looking at was, well, now you ain't really got no money. You ain't doing nothing. And I couldn't quite see, you know what I'm saying? And then it took, and I was rocking with him for like 8-9 years, you know what I'm saying? But it just didn't register for me, you know what I'm saying? And how much he really loved me. And then but by the time he figured out what my issue was, he just cut that off. And I was like, damn, see, you just like this and that. And but then I had to realize, ooh, this is me.
Wow.
I got a problem.
That's big right there.
Come on,
I was
accountability.
gonna say that's the growth that
That's-
a lot
I was
of us.
like,
a lot
this
of
is
us have
me.
a
I was
time
like, you know,
reaching.
because
Yeah.
if when you lose somebody that's pure and genuine like that, you ain't got no choice but to look at yourself and be like, now what's wrong with me? How come I can't receive that? Because I never got it. I never got it.
That trauma.
You know what I'm saying?
That trauma carries over. It does.
And it's deep. That daddy issues. It's deep. It's deep.
Masterpiece. What about noticing in your mates or whatever that in history or whatever, you know, this guy, have you ever noticed that your mates had issues or whatever the case may be?
Yes.
And how did that show up?
Absolutely. So mama trauma is a very real thing. The mother wound is a very real thing in men. And I've definitely had a few relationships where they were searching for the nurturing and the love of the mom that they never had in me and projecting the pain and hurt upon me. So it didn't matter what I would do. I could be given, the sky would be falling, I could catch it and be like, hey, here you go. And they would just be like, just because they didn't know how to receive. So that was surfacing, especially recently, that was surfacing in relationships. And I was getting to a point where I didn't quite know what it was. You know what I mean? I didn't know what, I just thought, okay, well, maybe these, because I'm like, okay, well, I know I'm cute. I know I'm smart. I know I'm driven. I know I'm this, and this. What is the problem? You know? And one thing Black women will do is we'll get to saying, well, maybe he's gay.
Quick, fast.
We start bringing up the masculinity. We start questioning the masculinity. And here's the funny thing about it. The funny thing about it is that a man with a mother wound will have more feminine tendencies because he was not able to harbor his childlike desires. It was thwarted by the mom. So when he grows up in an adult body still with a childlike mindset, he's going to be way more sensitive. He's going to be way more emotional. But as Black women, we translate that and be like, well, now maybe he can. And sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes it really is, okay, well, no, he's just still a child on the inside, searching for that thing. So every little thing. So when you have men that are just super emotional, super aggressive, and super this and that, they got that. That's that mother wound that's showing up. And
now they don't know how to relate to a woman.
Exactly. And then so they trust. You say they'll get along with their boys before they get along with women. You know what I'm saying?
I have a little bit of a different dynamic when it comes to that. I did grow up with my mother and father. I'll tell you what happens though. As kids, you don't know who your parents are. You know them for who they are to you, and this is how this has affected me as an adult. My point of reference for a good man or a good father, good husband, everything was my dad. You know, the things I point of reference for a good mom or a good mate would be in my mother.
Yeah.
But you don't see those other sides of those parents. You know, well, I didn't. So I didn't see my dad and my mom fight much. I didn't see them go through hard times that they did. I wasn't aware of that. So as I've gotten older, my experience was, all right, what did your dad do? You know, so that's what I would do. And then you learn that, guess what? I am not my father. And also, now we're talking about generational differences. The women of today are not like my mother and the generation of that day. So the things that were prioritized,
right
things
there.
that may be
That's
important
good.
or that may be looked at as a benefit, you know, for a character trait in someone, may not be recognized. And then you have to look at the family that person came from. You know what I mean? So you learn that, like, I'm doing all these things that my father did for my mother, and it's not being appreciated. It's not being welcome or accepted like that. And it could be from daddy issues. It could be from, you know, women who don't have good relationships with their mothers, you know, or they're not expecting that type of treatment. And I'm not bragging on myself at all, but I am. I know how to treat a woman.
Yeah.
I've learned it. I've modeled it. But this is what I've learned. I don't know and I hate to say it like this, but at some point in time, my mom wasn't the most lovable person to my dad, and vice versa. And what I had to learn was, like, everything ain't roses. And you could be thinking you're doing the best that you are doing. And as long as all these bases are touched, you're doing what you're supposed to do. And that's where the problem comes in, because nobody is the same. The generations are definitely different. And the things that we perceive as good for any relationship, they're going to vary upon the person.
Yeah.
You know,
That's what we
and
just talked about.
let me say this. This is where I messed up. And I can admit this right now. I can admit this. Doing things that you think are showing love, but not actually finding out the type of love or how somebody else identifies what love
Come
is
on,
to them.
Masterpiece. We were just talking about that.
Giving what you think.
Giving what you think.
want to give.
And you can be
about
as
that.
Just talked about
sincere as you want to be, but until you sit down and talk to that person and ask them, how do you receive this kind of, you know, affection?
Man, I'm
what is
telling
this?
you,
And everybody
big.
uses love languages, but I take it one deeper. I take it one deeper. Instead of just the love language, hey, what is love to you? What is it?
First.
Not the love language,
No,
but what is
first.
love?
Yeah, how do you
What
perceive
is love to
Somebody
you?
may have a different perception of that.
And when I learned that, I'm like, man, some of this is on me. Some of it really is. A lot of it can really be on you. But again, that goes back to the growth that y'all were talking about earlier, man. You sit back and you're like, man, it really was just a lapse in communication or understanding of what love really was or what affection really was. You know, and then some people, and I know I'm going over, but some people identify a man as this. And when you hold on to those three things, guess what? I learned from a man who wasn't very emotional, who didn't share his feelings like that. So I'm going into that thinking like, well, that's a good man. That's what my mom got. They still together. Well, now I'm getting to a point where it's like, oh man, you got to share those kinds of things. You know, you got to talk about molestation. You got to talk about, you know, being neglected. You got to, like, all those things. You got to talk about being, you know, pushed so hard and so tough to where you feel like you're about to break. Now you can do that. Back then you couldn't. So me trying to do that now.
That can change it immediately.
In a situation where you were receiving something that really wasn't catered for you, wasn't built for you?
Well, in my instance, you know, my mother left me when I was like 6 years old, and she went to prison. Right? But the reason she went to prison because she was protecting me. But as a child that young, you don't know that. You don't understand that. So how I perceive that and how that translated in my life is abandonmentship to the extreme. That's mama. I'm the baby boy. And you know what I'm saying? I was like spoiled and pampered. And now she's gone. And now I'm being abused by other family members. So you left me. You're not here to protect me.
Do you find yourself being controlling?
No. What it did is it showed up like this. That part showed up as every relationship that I was in my 20s, 30s, and 40s, or whatever the case may be, No one never left me. I always left them before
Left
they
them
needed
Because
me.
you didn't
first.
want that feeling.
But I was the fuck up.